What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Joined alongside Emilio in Tennessee. We got Jacob in Wisconsin. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Rumble here to talk some Packers this evening. I think the show started a little smoother than it did last night, so we're off on a decent foot here. Jacob, when you're not around, man, things go off the rails pretty quick.
Yeah, I know. It's me and Tim, we basically are the glue that holds the professionalism in this show together quite clearly. Emilio can't be trusted. So
you're an amazing person. You know that, don't you?
That's correct. Brad Christian in the chat. I want to hit this real quick. He says, rest in peace, Jim Irsay. Not sure if you guys heard the news just a few minutes ago. I believe it was announced that he had passed away in his sleep today, obviously the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. So, what it sounds like with Jim Irsay, people either loved him or they hated him. There was nothing in between. And if they loved him, it was like, this dude would do anything in the world for you. Obviously one of the more colorful owners, as someone who's been around the game of professional football his entire life. If I remember correctly, I believe it was his father that owned the team, and he made him work as an employee for the organization and kind of work his way up. Really cool story there. But again, thoughts and prayers out to Jim Irsay's family. Sucks that hear of his passing today for sure. So, Jacob, before we get into our two topics we got tonight, is there anything at the forefront of your mind you'd like to hit on before we get cranked up here? I know Emilio's got a topic here we're going to hit on, and then we're going to do a little wide receiver deep dive, a little bit of history along with it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So
nice. Honestly, no, it's kind of a quiet point in the season right now. There's just not a lot of stuff clicking right now. I'm excited about that because that means, in my opinion, no news is good news, especially with all the flurries of drama that's been kind of spiking around. So, no, I'm excited to deep dive into some wide receivers. That'd be cool.
We got a little Romeo Doubs update, too. We'll hit on as we talk wide receiver. I'm excited about that. It's good news. I feel like it's good news. We'll see what you guys think. But Emilio, man, what do we got on tap here early? I know you've been listening to the Move the Sticks podcast, one of my favorite podcasts. I haven't had a chance to listen to it in a couple of weeks, diving into some Wildy and Tausch and trying to take that angle there. But what did you get from their pod here recently? I believe it was kind of about them being in Baltimore as scouts and how they had a grading system and all that. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I like the divide and conquer there. We don't have enough time in the day to get through all the pods, so I like that you can hit that and I can hit some of these. But, Move the Sticks. And funny, it's going to be crazy that they were making a joke just that he's the Move the Sticks is not going to be, needed really anymore. They're kind of a backup now, but he said he's going to keep the name with that new technology rolling in. But talking as a scout back in the day, him and Bucky were going over it. And he was saying when he was with the Ravens and on a few of his other teams, they really stuck to a 3 to 7 scale while scouting players. So meaning that when you're going through, they were talking about Brock Purdy in this instance, but you can probably, scale this and use this across all positions. But scouting reports on players 3 to 7 for position specific grade scale. So 3 would be poor, 7 would be elite. That would make 4 below average, 5 average, and 6 above average. So what I was going to do is go through. Now I got you and Jacob. We'll go through and just go through some of the categories. And then I just want you to give me on a 3 to 7 scale what you have for Jordan Love in these categories.
I love it. I love this. Let's do it, man.
All right. So the first one we have is competitiveness.
Competitiveness. I immediately think, all right, we don't have like a huge sample size of Jordan Love playing football. However, I think of him diving into the end zone damn near on his head against I believe it was the Saints or maybe the Vikings on New Year's Eve it was. I remember the Saints game where he lowered his head and got chewed out by Matt LaFleur trying to run
through the Buffalo Wild Wings game. Yep.
Yeah. And, that's just – some people would say, hey, that's just stupid. You shouldn't do that as a quarterback. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, you'd be surprised at what that does to your teammates and lifts them up. Like, look, if that dude's going to go out there and lower his head into a tackle to get a few extra yards, I need to up my game. You take that into consideration with the fact that he played through 3 injuries last year and did not want to come off the field. His competitiveness on a 3 to 7, I don't want to overreact here, but what else could he have done to show his competitiveness? He literally – I mean, you've seen him limping around all year long on that knee. I'm going to give him a 7 there.
Yep. Jacob?
Yeah, I would say, just because I'm trying to be a little bit, not a homer, I'd say a 6 for sure.
Okay. I like it, yeah.
Clayton said, I think just the attitude he showed, he never seems scared. And I will give him credit too, as far as like he always seems poised. He never seems like we've always talked about the weird body language that we'd get from Rodgers, which I absolutely did not like. I never see that from Jordan. The most you see is that guy kind of have like more of like a deep breath or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think as far as he's on the field, I don't think there's much more than what he could do, but I'd say a solid 6.
I like it. So that would I would say he's got to be probably 6 or 7 as well. I think that he comes into it, with the right mindset. He works hard, came up and is still grinding. So I do love his competitiveness.
What do you think about this real quick? Chris Cajuan says being more vocal would be a 7, but he's a 6 for now in his eyes.
I like that. That's fair. Always room for growth and improvement. I like that, Chris.
Yeah, I want to say this about being vocal. That's something that Robert Brooks said on Wildy and Tausch today. They had him as a guest. If you guys don't know who Robert Brooks is, by the end of the show, you will. Really, really cool player in Packers history. Played in the 90s. But he said, I think it was – no. It was – Robert Brooks talked a little bit about Love, and he talked a little bit about Romeo Doubs, but it was Don Mikowski who said, I'd like for him to be a little more vocal, talking about Jordan Love, right? So Don Mikowski, remember the Magic Man that Favre took over for. I immediately thought, how many times did we hear people complain because Aaron was being too, you know what I mean? Like, I always come back to that. Like, we are never going to be happy, are we? Like, Aaron was that commander on the field. Like, if you screwed up, snap the effing ball, Josh, right? But it was just, I remember the Aaron Rodgers haters. They were all like, hey, he needs to quit acting like he's perfect out there and yelling at the receivers and yelling at the offensive line, blah, 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 blah. And now Jordan Love is just even keel, not saying anything. Everybody saying, I think he needs to be a little more vocal.
Yep.
So, and that's not a shot at Chris. I'm just saying that's the fan base as a whole. I remember people tweeting about it last year. I'm like, boys, I'm old enough to remember when y'all were ready to run Aaron Rodgers out of town because he was getting mad on the field. You know what I mean? So anyway, so do you want to grade that? Everybody want to grade that aspect?
Which
the vocal leader, or was he just tying that in there?
No, I think he was just tying that in. The second one would be toughness on a 3 to 7. Where would you put his toughness?
Toughness. There's one thing that sticks out to me last year. Mark Tauscher, they had mentioned that Jordan Love said that's the most pain he'd ever felt before when he sprained his – what was it he sprained? Was it his PCL?
I thought it was his MCL.
MCL, okay. Whatever it was he sprained, he said that's the most pain he'd ever felt on the football field. And Mark Tauscher went, that worries me a little bit because that's not that painful of an injury. So I immediately think of that, right? Like, okay, how much can he take in that regard? On toughness, again, he played on 3 injuries. Jacob, you go first. I don't want to steal your thunder. You go first on this.
It'd be easy to just say he played with injuries, so that's a 7. But like you said, the types of injuries a lot of guys have played with before and maybe wouldn't have missed. I mean, we're coming off of having guys like Brett Favre, Mr. Iron, Iron Brett, and that held up a sort of ceiling that I don't know if we're ever going to see from another player again, honestly, even at that position, let alone in our franchise. So for that reason, I would mark him a 6, maybe even a 5.5.
All right. Emilio?
Yeah, I would say that with the injuries, I think I was kind of looking at toughness a little bit more, head down, fought through it, played through it in the games kind of thing. So I was gonna give him a 7 on it, but I 100% see where you're at with that injury and not having to go through a bunch of pain on the field. But I think his toughness in game is right up there with the best of them.
So what would you give it?
7.
7? All right, got it. I'm gonna give it a 6 as well, like Jacob. So all right. Next category.
Next category would be poise, specifically just, put poise in the pocket, in games, clutch situations, stuff like that.
You said poise.
Poise.
Okay.
Poison. Poison. Some of y'all are old enough to get that reference. Go ahead, Jake. Poise. What do you think?
Poise. That's kind of an interesting label. He's very poised in the pocket. I think so. Again, I'll say that at times I see him. I never see he doesn't seem like he's lost his cool or that he's like playing frantic or anything, but every now and then you'll see just a few throws or decisions where you're like, where did that come from?
Tries to do too much, right?
Tries to do too much. So I would again go. I might even drop down to a 5. What is the ranking scale again?
3 is poor, 4 below average, 5 average, 6 above average, 7 elite.
3 to 7.
God, I might say a 5, leaning towards a 6.
Completely fair. Clay?
You go this time, Amelia. I'll go last.
Okay. For poise, what I love is how calm, little Michael Jordan tongue waggle. When he's sitting in there, it's not like he's even if he's got the rush coming in, closing in on him, he still holds his feet. But you're right, Jacob. I think there are a little bit, with where he's at in the pocket sometimes that does need improvement. Obviously, always need to get better. But I would give him a 6 in that.
Yeah, for me, again, I've watched so much damn tape, especially the last 2 years since doing the pod. I immediately go to specific plays that stick out. When you say something like that, I think of the Lions game in the rain where he panicked and threw the pick 6, just trying to make something happen off, And again, you can say that's toughness, that's grit, trying to make something happen, but that's poise. You got to know that situation. If I remember correctly, that lost us the turnover differential in the middle 8. It was just one of those, he got frantic in the moment and gave the ball away in a crucial time. When it comes to poise for me, you also think of the Saints game, his first year as a starter, taking them right down the field with the game on the line. That's got to count for something, right? So I'm going to say they kind of cancel each other out. I'm going to go 5 for poise. What'd you say yours was, Emilio?
I had a 6. Jacob had him at a 5.
Got it. All right.
I think Bates has a good point that kind of is sandwiched in between me and you, Clay. And he said he has great poise in the pocket, but those panicked INTs bring it back down probably in the 5.5-ish for me, which I completely agree.
That's very well said.
That's completely fair. The next would be intelligence. So on a 3 to a 7, where do we have his intelligence at?
Intelligence.
Like football IQ,
I was
probably
gonna say
would be what they're looking for.
Yeah. That's tough, man. Because like when you're not in again, those scouts, they see it, they know what they're looking for.
Right. And this whole thing is just laid out because they were chasing after the Brock Purdy contract. So they were most of Brock Purdy's, they were giving him 7s, I think 1 or 2 6s here and there. So 7's down. It's he can run Kyle Shanahan's offense. He's like an extension of Kyle Shanahan. He knows it like in and out, things like that. He knows down position, all that stuff. So I think that's where they were kind of going after it. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Cliff.
I appreciate you pointing that out. I think of the Dallas game, playoffs, right, where he comes to the line and completely changes the entire play at the line of scrimmage. If you guys remember that, where he sends Wicks down the seam.
Yep.
I think he did that against Minnesota on New Year's Eve as well. I don't know why I remember these specific plays, but you also got to take into consideration he's been in that offense for so long. So I can't give him a 7 knowing that this is the only offense he's known in the NFL, and he's just kind of had the luxury of sitting behind one of the all-time greats for whatever it was, 3 years. But I feel pretty comfortable. It'd be between a 5 and a 6 for me, and if I had to pick one of those two, I would say a 6. I'm going to give him a 6 for intelligence.
I like it. Jacob.
Yeah, it's as far as intelligence, like Clay said, that's a tough metric right now just for where he is. He's had one coach, one offense. There are times where like you see him make what I would consider a very smart play, whether it's taking this or that check down, or if it's just reading the defense the right way, like you said, pre-snap audibles, pre-snap motions, all sorts of stuff. But then you see certain times where he just chucks it up in the triple coverage and you're like, that doesn't seem very smart. I'd probably go 5.5, but if you have to give me a solid number, I'd probably drop it down to a 5.
Okay. I'm gonna say Jordan Love homer here, and I think I'm gonna give him a 7 on intelligence. Just he only knows one offense, right? He's only been in here with Matt LaFleur, but what has Matt LaFleur been? Just a guru with quarterbacks. Part of Sean McVay, part of Kyle Shanahan. If Brock Purdy, quote unquote, Mr. Irrelevant, is deserving of a 7 because he's able to process and run Kyle Shanahan's offense, I think Jordan does that and more, a little bit more maybe with Matt LaFleur, being that he's been here. He has the input like that. I think that he's deserving of a 7. Obviously, he can get better at some, but he really does keep his mind straight when it comes to in-game plays and stuff like that.
Hey, real quick, Bates convinced me. So if we're talking about FBI as being like, we don't have pre-snap issues, he never seems like he calls the wrong play. He doesn't seem like he's confused with the terminology.
He's not going under center, taking a knee on 4th down, or spiking it when we need a first down or anything like that.
So I'll definitely raise my grade up to a 6. Greg Rice sees like Clay, you had this highlighted. Can you explain why that grading starts at a 3 and ends at a 7?
Hey, explain to me why they have the grading system at the NFL level during the NFL draft process as a perfect prospect being an 8-0. Who knows?
Exactly.
Right? So
because that's all he gave us was when we worked with the Ravens, that was their scale. That was their grading scale. I think it kind of forces you out of one's terrible, zero's bad kind of thing. And all right, there's some value to it. Obviously, he could be poor at that skill, but he's still an NFL player. We can't, yank all that off of him. I think that's kind of where it would be at.
Got it. Well,
two more.
Hold on, just say we got a couple of chats here. Holmes MD1 says, "Who are we discussing? Jordan? What the hell?" I don't know what that was about. Okay, sorry we upset you there. And then he's let's see here. The other one. So did AR-12 have one offense? So what? He didn't have one offense, Bob. He did it under McCarthy. He did it under LaFleur. He won MVPs under both coaches. 2 totally different schemes. One was a wide zone spread. One was a West Coast spread. The other was a wide zone boot. Yeah. So Jordan has had one offense, one offensive coordinator named Matt LaFleur, one play caller named Matt LaFleur. So this is not let's compare Jordan to Aaron Rodgers. It's just amazing how when you mention Aaron Rodgers' name, people lose their crap. I don't understand it. But anyway, yeah, Aaron had multiple offensive coordinators, multiple offensive schemes. So anyway, go ahead. Next.
No, you're fine. Next category would be accuracy. That's arm accuracy. Jacob, looks like you want to take this one off the bat.
I was waiting on it.
I think that what I'd have to say is we see clips of greatness. We see flashes of absolute elite. We see maybe about 50% of the game of really passable, but there's too much. There's maybe a 20 to 30% of his throws where you're like, what the heck are you aiming at, dude? What are your thought processes? And if so, why did you decide to throw it? And to me, that's probably the biggest glaring issue that he needs to fine tune. And again, it's not terrible. But I'd probably give it a 5.
Got it. And Greg says 3 to 7 is just a 5-point scale. I must have missed who used the scale. It was like you said in the chat there. Daniel Jeremiah said this is the scale that the Baltimore Ravens used when he was a scout in their building. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And Bucky said that they use 3 to 7s too. And you get different teams doing different things, obviously, but just forcing yourself to put a number on it is honestly half the problem. We could sit here and talk about it all the time of, what he is, but once you put a number on it, you kind of put, a little meat on the bone there.
Yeah. And Jacob, you said a 5 for accuracy. Is that correct?
That's correct, Clayton.
All right. You want to go next, Amelia? You want me to go?
Yeah. I think right now I'm still, there were drops and stuff like that. I think that I would be probably at a 6, but hovering over a 5 right now, just because, he does, there is a lot to get better at. We always want more from that, but I think that he's putting it on them. I think we can be a little bit cleaner.
I wish Amelia was my teacher because I would have had all straight A's.
Right? I gave him a hey. Come on now, Jacob.
So a 4 would be average, right?
4 is below average. 5
is average. Yeah.
5 is average. 6 is above average. I'm gonna say he's like when you look at the completion percentage, and I know the wide receiver drops, I get all that. Guys, we got to stop pretending, too, though, that Jordan Love all these drop passes were perfect passes, because they were not. I remember people roasting Jaden Reed over a drop pass in an important game down the stretch, and he was diving for the ball. I'm like, how is that a drop? What are we talking about here? So I do think if you were to say, Clayton, what's the number one thing Jordan needs to improve on in his game? it's a multitude of things that tie into accuracy. If I had to say accuracy, it would be accuracy for sure. However, that comes with footwork, the fadeaway throws, all that stuff that we've seen that he's got to get that coached out of him. Don Mikowski talked about that earlier today as well. I'm gonna give him a. I'm in between a. I'm gonna give him a 5. I wanted to say 4, but 4. He's better than 4. He's better. He's significantly better than 4. But I don't feel comfortable enough to say 6. So 5 is average, right?
Right. Yep.
He finished with like a 62% completion percent. At one point, he was below 50%. You guys remember that, right? Like it was pretty bad. So, I'm gonna go with 5 there.
I think Jacob had this one highlighted, right, Jacob?
Well, yeah, just because when he says Jordan needs to, this is 12 for this saying this, that Jordan needs to learn when to take the easy, safe ball rather than try to make things happen. I think that on one part, that's why it brought my FBI down a little bit with him, just knowing the situation and knowing, like, there had been many times where I'm like, take the check down or just the wide open in or the wide open out route. You know what I mean? Instead, he looks past, and he really wants to make something happen. And I think that again, when he takes that decision, the accuracy isn't quite there to take that shot and have it be a payoff. It is sometimes, but not in the way where, like, when Rodgers would take a shot, you know that he had a window and he was confident he could fit it in there. I think Jordan's confident. It's just the talent's not following quite with it.
And Jacob, that kind of ties into that athletic pod where they were talking about what he was 38th in scramble percentage, after running. So it's like, are we taking the checkdowns? Or are you going to use those legs to get upfield? You don't have to be a 300-yard scrambler, but I just need you to use your legs wisely. Let's get north and south.
Yeah. Yep. Emilio, what'd you say on accuracy?
I had him at a 6.
6. Okay. And I don't think that's a bad grade. I don't think that's like, whoa, no way. I'm just kind of, I'm definitely closer to a 5 than a 6, I believe.
Right. And when they were talking about Purdy, it was more of he can hit he's accurate on the in-breaking routes. He's accurate on putting them, on the receiver, things like that. And when I'm thinking, I'm like, Jordan Love is all of Brock Purdy and, maybe even more, more of an athlete. So they were talking about Purdy. He can, he's got a little bit of juice, nothing crazy. He's not, an overwhelming athlete. He doesn't have crazy arm strength. And those are the things that we kind of do have with Jordan. He's a little bit more of an athlete. He does have that arm strength, arm talent. But are we, maybe a couple of the numbers are a little bit lower than Purdy if we're grading it on that kind of a scale. But he has a little bit more talent on the back end that Purdy doesn't have.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Both Stoder and Coach Lynn mentioning the footwork as well. I think we're all on the same page there for sure.
And then the last category would be decision making.
Yeah,
this is tough.
We'll save the best one for last, right?
Yeah, man, that's tough. Who wants to go first?
Well, decision making is key, especially when you're leaving, let's say, the Oval Office at 3 a.m. You got to make good decisions. You can make a bad one and end up in the wrong spot. Let's just say that.
End up in the wrong bed, right, Jake?
End up in the wrong bed with the wrong person.
I'm a fan right here.
His decision making. I mean, sometimes it pays off. Like again, that Rams game, throwing up into triple coverage. Somehow the guy comes down with it at the 2. I think it was Reed. You know what I mean? But that's not a good decision. Even though he paid off, that's not a good decision. Throwing some of the balls like wide open style interceptions or leading a receiver that was way too far. Again, I think that his clock management is improved greatly and really not been an issue as far as his pre-snap stuff, all that kind of stuff. Like Emilio said, setting protections, pre-snap motions, all that I'm cool with. I think that's running pretty elite. But generally, I think his decision-making has to be average at best.
Got it. So what would that number be?
5.
5. This is honestly getting the most run in the chat right now. The numbers, that decision-making is what, everyone clearly, feels most strongly about. I think that, he's had a couple tough breaks. Are we going to put them all on him? Quarterback's going to have to take most of the weight. Yeah. So I think you're kind of spot on, Jacob, that he'd probably be around a 5. Hopefully we could push him to a 6, but I think that this one would probably just be my lowest, him at a 5 here. Not terrible, but you're still making those kind of young issues or, a mistake that we shouldn't have, you kind of kicking yourself for it. Those we kind of just need cleaned up.
Yeah. Bates coming in hard with the 4. Oof.
That's what I was leaning towards too. I'm just trying to think, like, when did you see bad decisions? I could think of a handful of times, right? Like, I mean, there's numerous. When did you think, whoa, that was a great decision? Think of a play real quick. What's the first thing that comes to mind? I can't think of one.
Yeah.
It's almost like
a couple
play
of
within the
those
scheme, or you make a stupid decision. There's not this, wow, he really outsmarted the defense there. You know what I mean? So I think I got to go 4 there too, man. I hate to be the negative Nancy of the group. But
what do you think about this? I think Chris makes a great point. He says he can be a 3 and a 7 on the same drive on decision making, averages out at 5. I think that's a perfect way of explaining it.
I think that's a very fair assessment.
And there's nothing wrong with that as long as we get it. You get a score at the end, you'd be happy with it. But no, I completely can see that.
Yeah, this cracked me up too. For this says when he throws the Musgrave, it's a 1.
For the accuracy, yeah. And then the other question I had, just real quick, I think I know the answers, but just want to run it by you. The options are, if you're getting a quarterback, would you like elite talent and a good makeup of a person, or would you want elite makeup of a person and a good talent? Which would you rather have
as a quarterback?
As a quarterback,
man, if you've got a turd, if there's a turd in the punch bowl, which good isn't being a turd, right? Like, so I feel like when you say elite talent, good person, I feel like you're describing Aaron Rodgers. When you describe Jordan Love, I think it would be the opposite. I think it'd be good talent, elite person is what it feels like. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And listen, I know everybody's opinion has changed on Favre over the years, and I'm not going to get into all the deal. I mean, we could do a 2-hour documentary on how all of a sudden, everything has changed there. However, when he was with the Green Bay Packers, you won't find one person that would talk negative about him on that team. They would die for that guy. They loved playing with that dude. So when you talk about, good person in that regard, I think of good person on the team, not what are you doing in your spare time.
Right.
With that being said, like Favre, that was that perfect blend of elite. It really was. With Aaron, it was like if Aaron approached the game from a teammate standpoint, and I'm not saying he was a bad teammate. You guys know how I feel about Aaron Rodgers. But if he approached the game on the field the way Favre did as a teammate, my goodness, I don't know if he'd have won another Super Bowl or not, but you'd have been sitting here going, "There's not a person on the face of the earth that doesn't like Aaron Rodgers."
Right?
He's brash, and they knew coming out in the draft that Aaron was, he was cocky, he was overly confident. As Ted Thompson said, he's a complicated fella, right? He's that smartest dude in the room. That's just who he is. It is. Jordan's kind of the opposite, but. Boy, he can't spin that sucker like Aaron and Brett, at least to this point, in my opinion. And maybe it'll come along because those guys weren't spinning it that well early on either.
Right.
People forget how they struggled early on as well. But anyway, I'm trying to draw that parallel because we had 2 of the best measures for successful quarterbacks, So as we're grading Jordan, I think it's kind of cool to hit pause for a minute and kind of look back on those 2 Hall of Famers. You know what I mean? Think, all right, how close is he to that? So, like if you went through and did this same grading scale for those 2 players, that would be a fun one too, right?
Yeah.
Decision making for Favre.
Yeah.
That dude, but he would complete the pass and it'd still be a -2.
Right. Yeah.
So unbelievable. But all right.
Yeah, and then that was pretty much the section. The only other thing, we don't have to do it today, but maybe something we can look into. He was just saying that each scouting person had to go through and rank all the rosters, rank all the groups of positions for each of the teams to compare. So like say we're going through, all right, so you're saying, all right, as a team our roster is a minus, right, or a B plus. Then you look at our quarterbacks and each of those are going to get a grade on a grouping. Then you take that and you compare it to Detroit Vikings, things like that, kind of get yourself an idea on where you are in the division. So, our O-line's a B minus, but Detroit's D line could be an A, Bears D line could be a B plus. So, hey, maybe that's a spot we need to work on.
Got it. Jacob, you got anything else? Hit on it real quick. I'm trying to get our averages to see what we came up with here.
Yeah, I mean, we could possibly touch on something. I'm seeing in the chat how the tush push, I believe, was officially allowed to survive.
Okay, hold on just a second on that. I was meeting with Jordan here. I want to get our grades and then we'll move on to that real quick here. I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
So here's what we got. I took all of those, totaled them up, and then averaged them by 6, which was 6 categories. Emilio has the highest grade on Jordan at a 6.1. All right. I am second with a 5.5, and Jacob is third with a 5.3.
Eesh, Jacob. Oof. That's
we were
tough,
we were
man.
2/10 of a point apart.
Look, part of it is because I literally had to just do my 6-month reviews for my employees, and I graded them way too well. And I had corporate be like, you gotta smack a few of these guys down. And I was like, all right, cool. He's
overcorrecting.
Yeah, I got corporate brain in my head right now, dude. I'm grading harsh.
Good stuff. All right, so that'll do it for the Jordan Love segment. That's going to be a good cut up, and I enjoyed that. Emilio, great job bringing that up, dude. That was a fun conversation. And again, looking at it through the eyes of a scout and the unorthodox of how they grade their grade scales. I think that stuff's cool because it does get you thinking outside of the box as opposed to just 1 to 10. 1 to 5, whatever. So
because Brock got flying colors on that. They really didn't bring him down at all. It was mostly 7s, and I think he had 1 6. So it's our quarterback is Jordan Love is close to Brock Purdy, talent, all those things. So I just kind of wanted to get a take on where we maybe thought.
No, I like it, man.
I mean, if you had to make me choose one right now for the next 10 years, I'd still choose Jordan Love.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You don't want a scheme specific quarterback, Jacob.
No.
Very clear. All right, let's very briefly hit on the tush push before we get into the last segment here. Go ahead, Jacob. What do you got for us, brother?
I'm just kind of sick of it. It's one of those things where it never really interested me. And then our names got kind of drug into the conversation, and people started taking pot shots at the Packers when it seems like the sentiment now is that the Packers were kind of, where did I see a few comments where they said that they were kind of like when you're on the playground and you're like, you got to go fight this guy. And you're like, yeah, I do. And like, we got your back. And you turn around and all of a sudden nobody's there. And you're like, oh no. And meanwhile, you picked a fight with like the 8th grade bully. Right. So I think the Packers a little bit maybe got ahead over their skis and just wanted to say, all right, let's put an end to this crap, which is ironic because the Packers are one of the only teams that actually successfully stopped the tush push on multiple occasions. To be honest, I'm kind of done. It's a play in football. We should be able to figure out how to stop it. It is entertaining though to see what they're gonna do because I remember I think it was the Eagles. Maybe were they playing Washington or the Steelers? Where the defense were like, whatever, we're gonna jump every single time. We're literally gonna jump over the center and just on the slight chance that we can smack Hurts in the mouth. And then even the referees were like, we can't move the ball back any farther. It was the first time that I can remember watching a game where they said, like, we're going to just not, you can't keep doing this. We're going to penalize you and possibly I think at one point they said we're going to take away, did they say they were going to take away points or like possession or something? So I had never in my life ever seen that. I was just watching kind of like, keep doing it. Please keep doing it. But it's interesting for sure.
And here's the thing, like, go ahead. I'm going to get your take, Emilio, and then I'll give you my take because it's a little, and maybe we're on the same page here.
No, go ahead. You can take it, Clay.
All right. So, Jacob, I personally don't think Green Bay wanted to lead the charge with this. This is me personally. This is based off of stuff that I've heard people around the team say, people who cover the team on a consistent basis talk about. To me, this was a favor done by Mark Murphy for Roger Goodell. Okay. It's obvious that Roger Goodell and the majority, I'm going to repeat, the majority of the NFL teams want this banned. Okay. And I'm of the opinion, I don't necessarily want it banned. I just want the defense to be able to do the same damn thing. Like the fact that the defense is not allowed to assist each other on that play, but the offense,
crazy.
It's absolutely nuts. It's just stupid. So with that being said, typically what will happen with these one for meetings where they'll have these guys in there, and I don't know if today was actually a one for meeting or not, but they'll go in and it's like they won't even bring anything to a vote unless they think they've got enough votes to pass it, right? So when you hear, okay, this vote failed, they needed a certain percentage of the votes in order to get the pass. Now, this isn't like a normal democracy where the majority rules. The NFL needed 24 votes to ban the tush push, according to Adam Schefter. But they only got 22. So they still got way more than half of the league. I mean, half of the league would be 16 teams, right?
Yeah, because weren't they saying it was only going to be like 8 or 12 the first time they were talking about this?
Now, Packer fans are going, why do we have to be the asshats that brings this to the attention and make it look like we're soft, right? I'll tell you why. It was a favor from Mark Murphy and the only publicly owned team in the league. And oh, by the way, when's Mark Murphy done? This is last year, right? They don't have to deal with there being an owner, an owner spat in the meetings, which by the way,
he's got 0 Fs left on the field, like you said.
Right, exactly. It's like Robert Kraft. People don't know this, but Robert Kraft and Jerry Jones got into it real heavy one year at one of those meetings. That's the last thing the commissioner wants. They want all 32 of those owners or 31 and the acting CEO for the Packers to be on the same page. So this was, I think, Roger Goodell going, "Hey, bub, we'll get you the draft, right? I need you to stand on this hill for me right here because the majority of the owners want this. You're going to be stepping away. If you're the one who leads the charge, there's not going to be any bad blood in the room." Because it sounds like the Eagles are being pompous asses in the meeting, that they're heckling other owners, this and that. And the fact that they think this is a skillful play just absolutely cracks me up. And again, I don't want it banned. But to pretend like you guys reinvented the damn wheel because you're pushing somebody on the ass cheeks to get a first down, they were doing that in 1919, bub. Hate to break it to you. Like, this isn't like you revolutionized anything.
Yeah, I did that to get clean out of 1919.
What's that?
I said I did that to get you out of 1919.
You did, yes, he did. Actually, get me away from the beer cheese soup. They were running short up there. But so again, here are the teams that voted against the tush push ban. So these are the teams that were in favor of keeping the tush push: the Eagles, the Ravens, the Browns, the Lions, the Jaguars, Dolphins, Patriots, Saints, Jets, and Titans. Okay, everyone else voted against the tush push. So I know fans on the surface, and you're probably catching hell on social media from other fan bases like we're soft and this and that. I'll promise you this. There's 22 other fan bases that ain't giving you a hard time because their team voted for it as well. And honestly, they were probably more passionate about it than the Packers were. Because when you ask LaFleur, he don't care. When you ask Goody, he don't care. I'm telling you, this was.
And they played it off. They play it off like, we're just kind of, it might be a health and safety thing, and we're just trying to get it taken care of. But look at it, 70% of who voted no is also in the AFC. They don't even face the tush push half the time. You only have the Eagles who run it, the Lions who are just trying to be the Eagles, and then the Saints who are just struggling. So, I mean,
Yeah, 2-0 for this says 21 teams did want it. I don't know if I'm misunderstanding him here or not. Let's read the tweet again. NFL needed 24 votes to ban the tush push, but only got 22. So 22 voted to ban it. Here are the 10 teams that voted against the tush push ban. Okay, so I know that's worded about as bad. Adam Schefter having a rough time here on social media the last couple of weeks.
Maybe is he saying that the Packers didn't really want it, that they like to side with you? He's saying that they were only just a patsy, kind of a patsy.
Never cared either.
That makes sense. That's why I wanted to ask that too, because that makes sense there 2-0 for this. So, and again, maybe Mark Murphy was passionate about it. I'm just saying that the vibe. And have you noticed? Here's the other thing. Adam Schefter works for ESPN. They got a lucrative deal with the NFL, right? They're going to get inside information. Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, all these guys, all of these guys and gals that work for the NFL Network, they work for the NFL. Have you noticed the structure of every tweet? Green Bay's proposal, Green Bay's proposal, Green Bay's proposal. Telling you, man, this is politics, is what it is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So, that's my take. I could be completely wrong, but that's the feeling I get. So.
And they were probably hoping it got squared away and taken care of before Mark Murphy actually retired. That way, Ed Policy doesn't have to take on the heat of trying to run this through the ringer because you didn't get the vote this year. They're going to kick the can until next year. They're going to have to run the same exact thing next year.
Yeah, that's a great point, Amelia. That's exactly, and they were trying to prevent that, and it did not happen. So,
but it's great to even when we first talked about it from like, oh, there's only going to be a couple teams, then it was maybe 8 to 12, and they did some talking behind the scenes, a little bit of handshaking and rubbing elbows, all that, and we got it up to 22 teams that wanted that gone. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I want to point out this tweet too because it is so ironic. I'm sure you guys seen it. Adam Schefter said the Eagles' official reaction. That's what they tweeted out. Push on, right? Ironically, this specific play, the Packers
stopped them. Yeah,
it's hilarious that they picked that. Look, here we go. When it got banned. Remember that? What would we classify that play as there, Emilio?
That would be a bad decision. That would be a bad decision making.
I think that falls under poise, intelligence, and decision making.
Yeah. You showed that at the beginning of that segment. We will look real bad with all of our grades. So
anyway, I figured there would be some funny comments in there mentioning that obviously we stopped that specific play, but there wasn't. So anyway.
I think this was one more point I just wanted to say. White over here, 09, White 09 said, I don't have a problem with the tush push, but every time you look, they're not lined up in the neutral zone. They're always over it. How's that fair?
Yep.
Everyone's leaning. The heads, you already broke the arc, all of it.
Yep. It's a great point. So anyway, I say bring it on, man. You guys know how I respond to this type of stuff. Like, hey, don't change the rule. Let's get better at stopping it, which we were pretty darn good at stopping it last year. It didn't affect us that much. We fumbled the opening kickoff and threw 3 interceptions, which didn't even mention that on the poise and the biggest game of the year or the intelligence.
Yeah.
So,
but to be fair, we put up more points than them than anyone else, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah. It was actually I know we held them to less points.
Maybe that's what
pretty much in the playoffs. So, and I know some people go, I don't mean a hill of beans. I got you. I can respect that. But all right. Next thing here I want to hit on is this comment from Matt LaFleur. If I can get me a screen grab ready here in just a second. I'm going to pull this up. This was on Up and Adams with Kay Adams earlier today, or whenever it posted or what have you. But I want you guys to hear what he said about Romeo Doubs. To this point, I've been going, man, I'm worried because I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, Romeo Doubs has not been in-house yet for the offseason program, right? Well, I think you'll be happy with this. If you're a Romeo Doubs fan, if you're not, you're going to be unhappy. You might want to change the channel. But here's Matt LaFleur being asked about Romeo Doubs.
I do think we have a very, very competitive receiver room. I think it's as deep as anybody in the league. And I love how our guys go out there and compete and push each other. And, it's been pretty cool to watch the veterans, although that there's a first rounder coming in the room. There's a third rounder coming in the room. Just how they've embraced those guys and, taking them in, and they're coaching them up out on the field. We were out there earlier today, and I went over to tell Matthew something about one of his routes. And I was just about to start talking, and then Romeo Doubs grabbed him and started talking. And I said, hey, you talking about the Dover? He's like, yeah. And I said, all right, you got him. So, but that's a pretty cool thing to watch these guys. That's something that we're stressing with our team. We have a young team. We've had the youngest team the last 2 years, and just, it's important, I think, just to develop the leadership that is needed, that when you get into those, tough division games or playoff type games, that you have a player-led team that can help get you through those tough moments.
So how about that, gents? Romeo Doubs not only in-house, but Matt LaFleur name dropping him, saying that he's helping the first round pick in practice. Pretty
I just caught the ball.
Pretty darn cool, man. Pretty darn cool. There you go, 2 over this. I hope Doubs tells everyone his secret to catching the ball is just catch the ball. So, what do y'all think about that, man? Am I getting my hopes up here? You think he's still may be gone, maybe traded, or you think this is a sign that, hey, Dobby might be sticking around?
I think that it is exactly what we wanted to hear, especially myself. We all get so wrapped up in the drama and the headlines and all the every single minute, it seems like, especially during the draft and certain periods, that it's just tons and tons of information. And we maybe get a little bit sidetracked in believing some of the press releases that come out. And I think one of the best quotes I ever heard is, don't believe your own press releases. And I think that a lot of it, maybe we got too high on our horse thinking that we know a certain thing, like Jaw's gone, Romeo's going to get traded, Malik's going to get traded, all this kind of stuff, where it just isn't the case a lot of the times. And you can tell right there, that to me doesn't seem like Matt LaFleur randomly just bringing that up just for nothing. I think that he strategically knew what he was doing, maybe knows that, hey, Rome feels a certain way, maybe Jaden feels a certain way. What I'm going to do as a coach that is a guy that I don't think he's a people pleaser, but I think he's cognizant enough to understand that you have a locker room full of egos and personalities, and it's part of your job is to wrangle those in, and not to like baby certain players, but to definitely understand that, hey, sometimes a dude just needs to understand, hey, give him an attaboy. You know what I mean? Sometimes a guy needs to understand that when a veteran reaches out to a new player, they want that to be highlighted to see, like, that's what we do here. I'm going to call you out by name, and it's not going to be a big thing. It's a small thing, but it's going to go noticed by, I think, the franchise and hopefully by the media, but I don't think they will. They're not going to realize that. And the biggest thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up and let Emilio take over. I think I saw Greg Rice say crowded wide receiver room. Yeah, I'd rather have it be crowded than not crowded, because I guarantee we're going to have injuries on one or two, or God forbid more of these guys. I'd rather have a deep hopper and a deep lineup to let them come in and compete.
Yeah,
Just like The Office, Jacob, you want those extra tips, right, man?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Emilio. So
yeah. No, that's the truth. I mean, you never know what you're going to have. We already saw that Christian got hurt, right? He's going to be coming back from PUP. We'll have to find a spot for him when that time comes. But in that time period, you never know what's going to happen. You never know if someone is going to have an injury or someone just blows up and, is the number one and is, showing out, closing in on 1,000 yards by the time Christian gets back. That would be huge. It could be Jaden Reed, Wicks, whoever it is, could be golden. But having the options is, as I think, a nice luxury, though everyone is young, right? So that's kind of where you're playing that, and you have a bunch of options, but how weathered are they? How used to the game, to the scheme, the NFL, all that. And I think that's something that you can kind of build on the young guys a little bit sooner when you have, Romeo and Jaden Reed stepping up and, giving the young guys some ideas, teaching them different things. And I think that having, it's like you get out of JV, or you get out of modified into JV football, right? Then you're playing with the varsity guys. You have 12th graders, crushing on 9th graders. But hey, you gotta be the scout team, right, Jacob? I mean, I know they put you in at nose guard a couple times, but you got to learn from someone, and as long as they pick you up and teach you along the way, I think it's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And a cool conversation. I think this is going to tie in really well when you're talking about, players helping each other at specific positions and whatnot, and a little bit of history tied in here as well. We put together an article over in our Patreon community, Patreon group, and it's about Robert Brooks, and he was actually on the I'm gonna drop that chat down for just a second so we can see this. He was actually on the Wildy and Tao show earlier today, and I want you guys to listen to this story he told, and we're going to kind of tell the Robert Brooks story a little bit and talk about how things kind of shifted. First of all, the Lambeau leap, he doesn't get enough credit for that, and kind of talk about how things shifted when they decided to move on from Sterling Sharp, and they kind of went to this wide receiver by committee type thing, as opposed to, it's common knowledge that Brett Favre started to play way better football when Sterling Sharp left, because he stopped forcing the ball to Sterling, right? And Sterling was very vocal on wanting the football as well. But nonetheless, let's hear what he had to say on the Wildy and Tao show earlier today. If you guys have not checked this out, I'm telling you, you got to listen to it. Their show today was unbelievable. They were live at a golf event. It got rained out for most of the day, and it was just Packers legend after legend after legend. It was unbelievable. But here is Robert Brooks on Wildy and Tao from earlier today.
Now, let me ask you this, though, because this is why I brought it up. You talked about why you did it. Yep. Obviously, and I think Leroy is scheduled to appear at Tellurian as well, right?
He is, yes.
I always found it fascinating. He's in the Hall of Fame. He uses the Lambeau leap as a great marketing tool for him, along with his gold jacket. But I always said he invented it, but you perfected it. Do you feel like you get enough credit for that?
Look at Wildy stirring that pot.
Listen,
this is what he does. He's a pot stirrer.
If you look at the film, I mean, he jumped in this crowd that one time in 93. 94, nobody jumped in the crowd. He didn't. It was not even a thing in 94. And in 95, when I started doing it, it became this,
So Leroy and Reggie, that Oakland game, that was one and done.
Yeah.
And then they went a full.
I did not know this. They did the first Lambeau leap. Leroy Butler did after Reggie White recovered the fumble and pitched it to him. And I just thought Leroy just kept doing it, and it was just a big thing. They went a full season without doing that. Yeah, so check this out. That. And listen to why he says it's very brief, and you got to really pay attention. But he talks a little. He mentions briefly the riff between the fans and Sterling Sharp over him wanting a bigger contract. and he used the Lambeau leap to kind of create that bond with the fans and the players. Really cool.
Whole season with nothing?
Yeah,
I know your history. Is that right?
100%.
Yes. Wow.
That's the real story.
And you just decided to
I told
get it
you
back.
because,
About
because of Sterling and the situation with the fans and how I became the default go-to guy. I decided I'm gonna jump in the crowd. So that's what the story is told. I said, Roy, I'm gonna use that gesture, my man, and I proceeded to jump all in the stands. And so you see, the rest is just history. There's a special bond between the players and fans. You see.
He's dropping lyrics right there for you. For those of you that are too young to reference it.
So if you guys don't know what he's talking about there with the lyrics,
he's got a rap album.
Yeah, he got a rap album. He's got another song ready too. He said he's just waiting for Aaron Rodgers to retire, and it's basically it kind of sets off the Jordan Love era. He's trying to threw a wrench in it. He said he was ready to do it if Aaron retired, and then he went to the Jets, and now he may be going to the Steelers, so he's having to hold off on it. So if you guys have not heard that song, Jump in the Stands, it is cringy, but I love it.
It's a banger, Clayton. How dare you?
Yeah, I think some would call it a banger. But, anyway, go ahead, Jake.
Just Itchy Soder. I remember seeing the highlight, dude, in 1995. That was a great year for me.
We're about to talk about all that, man.
Are you? Okay. 102 receptions, 1,400 yards, 13 tuds in 95. He was on track to be a superstar. He was my favorite.
And Emilio, many fans are like you, Emilio, too young to remember this, right? Like you know, how old were you in 1995, Emilio? Roughly?
I was born in 95.
Oh my God.
You say you weren't born?
I was, correct. Yeah. And 95. I probably, it was, so I was born by the time they probably.
Do you not know your birthday, buddy? Or you got to remember a fake one?
Yeah, well, it depends. I wasn't sure if I was counting OTAs and mini camp and all that. So,
all right. So let's dive into some info here and talk about how the receiving core kind of evolved from 1994 on. Okay. So the Green Bay Packers wide receiver, Robert Brooks, one of the most underappreciated players in Packers history. Unfortunately, Brooks' career was altered with an ACL injury in 96, sidelining him for the team's Super Bowl run. He was never the same player after that and mentioned how far medicine has advanced, seeing that he still has a wire inside his knee as a part of the ACL repair. They made it sound like it was a metal wire in his knee.
That's weird. Yeah.
Look at his career statistics here. Starting in 92, 126 yards, 1 touchdown, 180 yards, no touchdowns. And then in 94, that was Sterling Sharp's final year in Green Bay, 648 yards with 4 touchdowns. And then 95, bang, 1,497 yards receiving for 13 touchdowns. 96 is when he tears the ACL. He drops to 344 and 4 touchdowns. 97, he jumps back up over 1,000 with 1,010 and 7 touchdowns. And then he had 420 yards in 98 with 3 touchdowns. And he mentioned that he kept popping his left hammy. This is the stuff we talked about with Christian Watson. Like the gurus on Twitter were like, it's not even the same knee. He's just injury prone. It's because you overcompensate, right? And you start to tear other muscles. You start to screw other things up. And he said he had back issues as well because he's trying to overcompensate to get the knee right. And again, knee surgery back then was way different. Many Packer fans have no idea that without Robert Brooks, the Lambeau leap would not have become so popular. He pretty much told that story right there. I'm going to fast forward ahead. It says Brooks went on to say that his intent was to form a bond with the fans in Green Bay in a time when Sterling Sharp's situation with the fans, most likely from a contract dispute, was caused a little rift. So evidently he was trying to hold out for a new contract, and it was causing a thing. He was wanting way more targets as well. I love Sterling Sharp. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm glad he's in the Hall of Fame. But that he was that one of those first receivers that was like, get me the damn ball, get me the damn ball. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but Mike Holmgren's West Coast offense was not designed to just go, hey, we're going to throw the ball to that guy every single play, right? So there, obviously, Robert Brooks doing the Lambeau leap. Okay, here we go. In another video that I can only attach one video to this, so we couldn't post it, right? In a recent interview with Willie and Tausch, which was today, he spoke about playing alongside newest Pro Football Hall of Famer Sterling Sharp. There's no denying that Sharp is one of the greatest wide receivers in NFL history. With that, sometimes comes a sense of I am the guy that can steer targets into coverage as opposed to scheming guys open. Brooks pointed out today, not in an overly negative way, I don't want to misrepresent this, but he was just talking about how Sterling didn't help him. Sterling didn't go, come here, little fella, let me take you under my wing and show you how to do this. Sterling was like, get me the damn ball, get me the damn ball. Okay. He said how their offense really opened up after Sharp's time in Green Bay came to an end because he started to mentor people like Antonio Freeman, and it became an us thing, is what he went on to say. Okay. So obviously Sterling Sharp's a dog. I mean, look how big he was, man. He's a specimen. Like, seriously, he was almost tight end size back then. You know what I mean? He also mentioned Sharp didn't spend much time teaching him how to play the position and how that made him want to mentor young guys, specifically a young Antonio Freeman. It was that approach that then influenced Antonio Freeman to be the same type of teammate. All right. As Wildy pointed out, this seemed to force a shift in the Packers organization that would lead to decades of the team having an us approach to the wide receiver room. Let's take a look at the Packers receiving stats beginning in 94, Sterling Sharp's last season. So when you look at 94, Sterling Sharp led the way 1,119 yards and 18 touchdowns. Dog. Absolute dog. And that was back when they were playing how many games? Just 16, right? 16. I would imagine. Maybe. Yep. I don't think it was less. So, yeah, right around there. So Robert Brooks came in second with 648 and 4 touchdowns. Edgar Bennett had 78 catches that year.
Wow.
Remember we were talking about that pro set, Emilio, running West Coast offense, throwing to the backs out of the backfield. You would supplement the lack of a run game. Not that Edgar Bennett and Dorsey Levens couldn't run the football, but you would check it down to them, and it would be an extension of the run game, essentially. Anthony Morgan, 397 yards. All right, 95. Robert Brooks blows up, right? Sterling Sharp's now gone because of the injury. 1,497 yards, 13 touchdowns for Robert Brooks. Mark Chimura, tied in. 679 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. Edgar Bennett had 61 receptions for 648 yards and 4 touchdowns. Mark Ingram, 469, 3 touchdowns. Dorsey Levens, 48 catches for 434 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, look how many – you had over 1,000 yards to the running backs that year.
That's crazy.
Receiving. That's absolutely crazy.
Keith Jackson.
Yeah. Now you see a young – you notice here too, look for Antonio Freeman. His rookie year, I guess, was 95. So in 95, when Robert Brooks blew up, Antonio Freeman just got his first action, right? 106 yards. So he was talking about trying to take him under his wing and bring these younger guys along, right? When 96, he tears his ACL. Look who jumps to the top. Antonio Freeman with 933 yards receiving, 9 touchdowns.
Don Beebe.
Yeah. 699 yards for Don Beebe with 4 touchdowns. Look at Keith Jackson. Just the other morning, I had breakfast at Tracy Rucker's house. His mama brought out 15 flapjacks. He said, "Mama, take back 5 of them flapjacks. I got to stay hungry
for the Crimson Tide."
I'm not going to, so quit asking.
So Keith Jackson, 505 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns that year. Mark Chimura, 370 yards receiving, no touchdowns. Robert Brooks, obviously the 344 with the ACL, only 4 touchdowns. Dorsey Levens, 226 with 5 touchdowns. William Henderson burst on the scene that year as well, right? Edgar Bennett, that was another thing that they talked about on Wildy and Tausch, was how Edgar Bennett and Dorsey Levens was on the show talking about how Edgar Bennett would not mentor him. He wasn't having it. Good friends, but it was like, man, I got to get my touches as opposed to Dorsey coming in and taking touches.
You know what's crazy, Clayton? Can you just scroll up to the top of this chart? Every year, the Packers are so good at – you look at the bottom of their roster, you got Terry Mickens and Dorsey Levens. Then you click to the next year, and Mark Chimura is kind of non-existent. And then you go to 95, and all of a sudden you see Chimura there, number 2, Dorsey Levens clinking up. And then who's there at the bottom? It's Antonio Freeman, William Henderson. You go to the next year, and all of a sudden at the top of the list, you start seeing Antonio Freeman, William Henderson. Then below that, you see Andre Rison and Desmond Howard. Mm-hmm. I guess that if you get to the next, yep, boom.
Now look at this. In 97, Robert Brooks is now gone, right? And look at Antonio Freeman. I'm sorry, Robert Brooks is still there. You got Antonio Freeman now leading the charge, 1,243 yards and 12 touchdowns. Robert Brooks is now second at 1,010 and 7 touchdowns. Not once did Robert Brooks say in that interview, like, yeah, man, Antonio Freeman, he was getting my touches. It was about us. And you've seen in 97, they had a better team in 97 than they did 96. They were heavy favorites to win that Super Bowl when they end up losing to the Broncos. If you remember that. Chimura, 417, 6 touchdowns. You had Derek Mays, a couple other guys. Don Beebe still hanging on by a thread there. But you see 2 receivers stepping up, 2,000-yard receivers, right?
Billy Schrader. Remember Billy Schrader?
I remember Billy Schrader. All right, 1998. Antonio Freeman absolutely blows up. Now Robert Brooks is really drifting away. That's when the back injury and everything started to emerge, the hamstrings. He drops down to 420, but Antonio Freeman now goes up to 1,424 yards. Okay. Mark Chimura, 554. Bill Schroeder, 452. Robert Brooks to 420. Derek Mays, 394. And it's just the point of, like, you can see how something shifted to where it was like, all right, the older receivers are starting to bring the younger receivers on, and they're kind of working in tandem, moving the ball around. 99, you had Antonio Freeman and Bill Schroeder both eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving with 6 touchdowns and 5 touchdowns. Corey Bradford came on the scene. He had 637 yards receiving. Dorsey Levens with 573. Tyrone Davis, 204. William Henderson, 203. Right? And now you're seeing Chimura kind of fade away, right? He only played 2 games that year.
Look who's on the bottom of that list, Clayton. Third from the top. Third from
the
bottom.
Donald Driver, right? So you're seeing, now Donald Driver comes on the scene here, 7th round pick.
That's crazy.
All right, now this is where it gets a little tricky because for whatever reason, ESPN did not have the stats for the Packers starting in 2000. I don't know why. They had the older, but not these. And the way this is broken down, this is definitely receiving. A couple of these get a little wonky here in a minute. But Amon Green had 73 catches. He had the most catches of anybody on the team, running back, 559 yards receiving that year. Bill Schroeder had 65 catches for 999 yards. Antonio Freeman had 62 catches for 912 yards. So what you notice in there, and look at Driver now jumps up to 322. He's starting to climb, right? But again, the 2 leading receivers there, Bill Schroeder and Antonio Freeman, both with 900 yards receiving. So 2001, this is where they, for whatever reason, Pro Football Reference combines rushing and receiving. So it's kind of hard to get this just total scrimmage yards. So the receivers, is pretty much receiving yardage. However, Amon Green, total scrimmage yards that year, I'm telling you, this dude was a dog. If you guys have not watched the tape on Amon Green, go back and find highlight reels. What an unbelievable Packer. 1,981 total yards that year for him. Bill Schroeder had 924. Antonio Freeman had 813. Corey Bradford had 526. Dorsey Levens, that's all purpose there, so we won't count it. Bubba Franks was, 322, and then Donald Driver settling in at 205 that year. So, again, just wanted to kind of walk back in history and talk about what Robert Brooks had mentioned there in terms of, how they how things kind of shifted from Sterling Sharp just being the guy to, hey, we need to kind of do this together. I thought it was really cool. So, Emilio, did you learn anything there, man? I know you talked about it, but when I mentioned this to Emilio pre-show, he said, I don't know much about Robert Brooks, man. Help me out here.
Yeah, I don't. And I'm going to have to do a little research tonight because, man, it kind of gets me excited about the receivers we have here, right? So, you have a guy that's been there, then you draft somebody, then an injury happens, somebody gets pulled up. Then you keep drafting, you keep bringing in new guys, and Donald Driver hops in there at the end. I think it's awesome that they've kind of done this before. Let's see where it goes moving forward. And this is before the wide receiver room said no sleeves. I like to see that upgraded there. Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah.
So, how about this? How about we do a quick little chalk talk on Robert Brooks? All right. I'm going to play a clip here in a second. Now, listen, guys, we got to end on YouTube, okay? As you guys know the rules here. I'll see if I can maybe cut this video and upload it later on YouTube. We're going to stay live on X and stay live on Rumble. So you got a couple minutes. Hop in there real quick if you want to watch this. Robert Brooks went on in that interview with Wildy and Tausch and talked about they asked him about the 99-yard touchdown catch he had. I think it was in either 94 or 95. He had a 99-yard touchdown catch on 3rd and 10 from their own 1-yard line. It's the coolest story ever. We're going to break it down a little mini chalk talk, and then we'll wrap up. So Bates is already in Rumble. You guys hop over there. Again, the link is in the description, all that good stuff. Or you can just hop over to my X account at Packers _. Jacob is gone. All right, so we'll see you guys over there. We're going to end here on YouTube.